My husband, Marcellus, was in the kitchen preparing dinner when his phone buzzed with a message from a coworker. "Boss, I miss you." After a brief pause, I replied for him. "Come over, my wife isn't home today." A short while later, the doorbell rang. Marcellus's face drained of color, pale as a ghost. The luxurious Buckhead condo smelled of slow-cooked oxtails, sweet, savory, and warm. The scent of home, of the perfect family life everyone dreams of. Or at least, that was what I had always believed. Until that very moment. Marcellus stood by the stove, stirring the pot over low heat. Wearing the navy blue apron I had gifted him for our anniversary, he hummed an old R&B love song. Seen from behind, he was the image of a successful black man, poised, professional, yet tender enough to care for his family. He often said that earning money in the world is an obligation, but cooking for your wife is a privilege. I sat at the kitchen island, flipping through an architectural digest, but my mind was elsewhere. The warm yellow light illuminated the marble countertop, where Marcellus's brand new iPhone lay, screen black and silent, a small abyss hiding secrets I had never suspected. Even as his wife, Marcellus turned to me, radiant smile in place, the fine lines near his eyes adding to his charm. He asked me to taste the gravy, then returned to his careful blend of spices. And then it happened. The phone lit up with a cold, blue glow, a WhatsApp notification. My gaze flicked to it instantly. 4 words appeared. "Boss, I miss you." My heart didn't hurt. It had died a week ago when I held the bank statement in my hands. What remained was pure contempt and a plan. I knew the name. She was the new intern in Marcellus's department, the one he had praised for being eager, polite, and quick to learn. I hadn't imagined that eagerness would extend to her boss's husband. I inhaled slowly, steadying my lungs. I had overcome too much to lose control now. Screaming would mean excuses, dismissals, denial. I needed proof, undeniable evidence. Marcellus chopped vegetables. The rhythmic tap of the knife masked my racing heart. Quietly, I picked up his phone. The passcode? Our wedding anniversary. Ironic, really. He used the most sacred day of our lives as a shield for his lies. 6 digits later, the screen unlocked. Without opening the message, I typed a reply. "Come over, my wife isn't home today." I hit send. The blue double check appeared, and a faint smile crossed my lips. Screenshot taken, sent to my own phone, then deleted from Marcellus's device. He wouldn't suspect a thing. I returned the phone to its spot, exactly the way it had been, hands trembling. Not from fear, but from a rage buried deep in my soul. Marcellus's back faced me, still the devoted husband I had known. And now, in my eyes, a mask of repulsive hypocrisy. He played the perfect husband with effortless ease. Yet I knew his mind was likely drifting to his young, pretty mistress. If he wanted to perform this farce so convincingly, I would make sure I directed the tragic final scene myself. I smoothed my hair, composed my expression, and returned to my usual calm exterior. The storm inside me remained tightly contained behind a serene gaze, biding its time, waiting for the moment to obliterate everything in its path. This was going to be a very long night. Marcellus served the steaming oxtails in a large dish, placing it carefully at the center of the table. The aroma of allspice, thyme, and slow-cooked beef wafted through the dining room. With meticulous care, he wiped even the tiniest drip from the rim. Yesterday, that aroma might have drawn me into his arms. Today, it felt like sugar-coated poison. He scooped a portion of white rice onto my plate, selecting the most tender, enticing piece of meat and placing it on top. In that warm, deep voice I had once loved, he said, "Eat while it's hot, baby." I cooked the meat until it falls off the bone. He even boasted about visiting 3 different markets to find the perfect cuts, just to take care of me the way I deserved. I accepted the plate, steadying my hands as best I could. I lifted a piece of meat to my lips, chewing slowly. It was perfect. Tender. The gravy seasoned just as I liked. But as I swallowed, a bitter, nauseating taste lingered, as if I were chewing ashes. I had to gulp water to keep from gagging. Across from me, Marcellus ate with ease, offering me sides now and then, telling amusing stories from work. He spoke about a new project, the CEO's praise, his plans for promotion. But never a word about Kailani, the young intern, or any hint of the "I miss you" that had just flashed across his phone. How could a person maintain such a double life, flawlessly shifting from an illicit message to the role of the devoted husband? Perhaps, over our 6 years of marriage, he had performed this act so many times that even I could no longer tell where the genuine ended and the mask began. I remembered the beginnings of our life together. We started with nothing in a tiny studio on the outskirts of the city. Marcellus had taken my hand and promised to work tirelessly so that I would never want for anything, and he had kept that promise. This luxury condo, these comforts, they were the fruits of our combined efforts. Yet as material abundance grew, so did desire, and the devoted wife who once shared a humble sandwich with him now seemed flavorless compared to the fresh allure of young women outside our doors. Feigning fullness, I put down my fork. "I'm a little tired." "Not very hungry," I murmured. Marcellus immediately wore a concerned expression. He rose, approached me, and placed his hand on my forehead to check for a fever. His touch was warm, but the moment it brushed my skin, a chill seeped into my bones. I turned my head slightly to dodge it, excusing myself to fetch a glass of water. I glanced sideways at the clock on the wall. Time was crawling, yet I knew the night was only beginning. The short hand edged toward 7, the long hand creeping to 12. Time moved with a mocking slowness. From her office or her student apartment, it would take between 30 and 45 minutes to arrive. I wasn't about to let this golden opportunity slip away. "My wife isn't home today." Those words were more powerful than any invitation. When I returned to the table, Marcellus was clearing the plates. "Go rest in the living room," he said. "I'll take care of the cleanup." Once, I would have bragged about my husband rolling up his sleeves to wash dishes. Now, it was just another act in his disgusting theater. I settled on the sofa, picking up the TV remote but not turning it on. My gaze stayed fixed on the front door, ears straining for the faintest sound from the hallway. A fierce battle raged inside me. Part of me wished she wouldn't come, that this had all been some cruel joke so I could keep pretending. The other part, the colder, sharper side, yearned for the doorbell to ring immediately. Pain, I knew, only healed when it surfaced. Raw and exposed, even if the scars lingered forever. Minutes dragged like hours. The sound of running water stopped. Marcellus emerged, towel in hand, offering fruit for dessert. I shook my head, a faint, crooked smile touching my lips. He didn't notice, too self-assured. Or perhaps he had never cared enough to notice anything unusual in my eyes. The clock struck exactly 8. The apartment was so silent, the ticking of the second hand was deafening. Marcellus sank onto the sofa opposite me, scrolling through the news on his phone with total tranquility. He probably imagined this was another peaceful evening with his devoted wife. Or maybe he was already plotting the next message to his mistress. Then came the sound. Ding dong. The doorbell sliced through the silence. Small, almost polite. But in that quiet space, it sounded like a gunshot announcing the start of war. Marcellus's head shot up, surprise mingling with confusion. He glanced at the clock, then the door. "Who could that be at this hour?" he muttered, looking at me as if I held the answer. I remained motionless, icy calm. "Stay seated. I'll get it." My voice was soft but firm, leaving no room for protest. I rose slowly, each step on the hardwood sounding like hammer blows driving nails into a coffin. My heart raced, not with fear, but with the thrill of a hunter closing in on prey. I inhaled, straightened my posture, and placed my hand on the doorknob. I opened the door. In front of me stood a petite young woman, perfectly made up, still holding the faint innocence of youth in her face. She wore a tight dress that accentuated her figure and carried a small, neatly packaged cupcake. The flirtatious smile she had surely imagined for Marcellus vanished instantly. Panic widened her eyes, drained the color from her cheeks, and made her hands tremble, nearly dropping the cake. She had expected him to open the door, to sweep her in his arms, hear his honeyed voice. Instead, she was met by me. The lady of the house, my gaze sharp as a knife. I said nothing at first, simply observing her terror. Silence thickened the air. Kaani took a half step back, lips moving as if to speak, throat blocked by fear. Her eyes darted toward the interior, then back at me, like a caught thief. Marcellus' voice broke the tension. "Who is it, babe? Why are you taking so long?" The sound sent Kaani into further confusion. She searched for an escape, but I would not let my prey flee. I smiled, probably the most terrifying smile she had ever seen. Then I spoke, clear and commanding. "Hello, Connie. Are you here to see my husband?" She shuddered, realizing she had fallen into a trap. The door stood open. The game had begun. Connie shrank like a bird caught in an eagle's nest, squeezing the cake box until her knuckles whitened. She stammered a feeble excuse. She had heard Marcellus was sick and brought a cupcake to cheer him. A ridiculous lie. I knew he wasn't sick, and this gated community was impossible to pass by accident. But I said nothing. The thrill lay in letting her fear grow. Her face shifted color by the moment. She attempted to turn, but I froze her in place. "If you take a single step out of this hallway, tomorrow the entire company, and your parents back home, will see the photos and messages between you two. Come inside. Let's talk calmly, and I'll let you leave with a shred of dignity." Rooted to the spot, trembling, she followed me inside. I gestured to the house. "Since you're here, take a look around. Very cozy, isn't it? And I want to formally introduce you to my husband." I emphasized husband, as if stamping my ownership on the man frozen behind me. Marcellus had reached the living room. His face crumbled. Eyes bulged, mouth agape, phone slipping from his hands. He alternated between Kasani and me, panic and confusion twisting his features. I led Kasani to the center of the living room, seating her on the armchair facing the sofa. She perched on the edge, back straight, knees together, daring not to meet my eyes. I gestured to Marcellus to sit beside me. He obeyed, a soulless automaton, sweat dotting his forehead despite the air conditioning. He sat as far as possible, as if I were a live bomb. Introductions began. I explained to Marcellus who Kaani was, the eager intern who had come in the middle of the night with a cupcake, believing he was sick. Then I introduced Marcellus to Kaani, describing him as the exemplary husband who had never disappointed me. Each word a needle, piercing him. Kaani's eyes pleaded with Marcellus for reassurance, but he remained silent, head down, fiddling with his shirt hem. Cowardice replaced authority, and I could see Kaani's hope slowly fading. The man who had commanded respect at work was now reduced to a trembling figure afraid of his wife. I stood, announcing I would offer our guest a drink. I asked Kayani what she wanted. Orange juice, water, or some hot tea? Her voice was barely audible. "Water, please." I smiled and made my way to the kitchen. The living room fell into a tomb-like silence. I knew that the moment I disappeared, those two would exchange furtive, panicked glances, but neither would dare speak. I wanted that silence to gnaw at them, letting terror eat away at their minds, slow and relentless. In the kitchen, I made deliberate noise, clinking plates, opening cabinets, shuffling glasses, everything to remind them I was nearby, listening. I passed by the crystal Waterford we reserved for important guests, stopping instead at a pack of thin, disposable plastic cups, the kind you see at cookouts or office water coolers. I filled one with tap water. The choice was deliberate. Every detail mattered. I wanted Kaani to feel her place here. Cheap, temporary, disposable. Not permanent, not worthy of value. I returned to the living room with a tray, setting the plastic cup in front of her. For Marcellus and myself, I served tea in fine china with gold rims. The contrast was undeniable. Connie's eyes widened as she registered it. Her face burned crimson. She understood the message, wordless, but sharper than any insult. I sat next to Marcellus, deliberately pressing close. My head rested against his shoulder, my arm around his. He went rigid, wooden, muscles tight with tension. Through the fine fabric of his shirt, I could feel his frantic heartbeat, the cold sweat sliding down his temples. I began speaking, social and innocent on the surface. How was the internship going? Was Marcellus demanding? Had he been difficult with her? Did he ever harass the interns? Meanwhile, I caressed Marcellus's arm, threw him affectionate glances, projecting the perfect picture of a devoted wife. Kaani's responses were monosyllabic, her gaze a mix of envy, bitterness, and fear. She watched helplessly as the man she coveted belonged, legally and entirely, to another woman. The sweet whispers she had imagined from Marcellus now rang hollow against the reality unfolding before her. The air in the room grew thick, suffocating. Even the central air couldn't dissipate it. I felt like the director of a silent, tragic play. Every actor performed, yet only I knew the script and the ending. Suddenly, I changed the subject, my voice bright with enthusiasm. I turned to Marcellus, describing our vacation plans to St. Lucia next month. The blue ocean, white sands, romantic candlelight dinners. I spoke of a lake house in the Blue Ridge Mountains for weekends spent gardening and fishing, and how we were already planning to care for our parents in their old age. Every word was a dagger aimed at Kaani's heart. She saw, with chilling clarity, that she was excluded from our life, from the future, from our assets, from the long-term plans. She was nothing but a temporary whim, disposable, irrelevant. Marcellus remained silent, trapped between panic and guilt, unable to confirm or deny anything. Marcellus seemed to be sitting on hot coals, wishing this psychological torment would end, but I had no intention of letting him off easily. I wanted to etch this night into both of their memories, so that every recollection would send a shiver down their spines. I turned to Connie, smiling innocently, but my words carried a razor-sharp edge. Connie, you're young and beautiful. Surely you have plenty of men chasing after you. Me? I'm getting older. I have to hold on to this man, or someone might snatch him in a careless moment. These days, there are thirsty side chicks popping up everywhere, like mushrooms after the rain, right? Kaani flinched, lowering her head abruptly. Her fists clenched so hard her knuckles went white. She knew exactly who I meant. That single phrase, spoken lightly, cut through her like a razor, severing the last thread of her pride. The words hung in the air, making the room even more oppressive. She didn't dare respond, mumbling something incoherent while avoiding my gaze. Her once confident, flirtatious posture had completely crumbled, replaced by the trembling, guilty demeanor of a sinner awaiting judgment. I wasn't finished. I turned to Marcellus, tightening my grip on his arm just slightly, my nails pressing through his shirt to remind him of my power. My tone softened, honeyed yet still sharp as a knife, as I asked about the lake house in the Blue Ridge Mountains we had visited last week. I spoke clearly, ensuring Kaani could hear every word. I reminded him how our parents had loved the land, its good energy, and the cool breeze near the river. I emphasized that my parents had promised $15,000 toward renovations as a gift for future grandchildren. The mention of children made Marcellus's body tense immediately. It was his weakest point. We had postponed having kids for 6 years until financial stability was assured. And now, after all that preparation, I discovered his betrayal. I had deliberately brought up children, knowing that family, legitimacy, and social standing were anchors that a passing mistress like Kiani could never offer. I painted a picture of a happy family, laughter filling the house. Next year would be perfect to try for a baby, I said. At our age, it's ideal, and I hope for a boy. Then, I turned to Kaani, my voice bright, as if asking her opinion. Don't you think that's a wonderful plan? The effect was immediate. Kaani jumped, dropping the teaspoon she had been holding. The metallic clink against the porcelain saucer cut sharply through the silence. She hurried to pick it up, her face flushed, stammering. It's a great plan. I'm sure you'll be very happy. The irony was exquisite, her forced blessing, delivered from the lips of my rival. Inside, I knew she was screaming. Envy was devouring her whole. She had come here convinced she could carve out a space for herself in our life, but all she found was a brutally clear message. In our future, she didn't exist. The assets, the family ties, the long-term plans, All of it formed an impenetrable wall around this marriage, a wall someone like her, with nothing to offer beyond youth and desperation, could never break through. I pressed deeper into the financial front. Tomorrow, I'll make the transfer for the down payment, I told Marcellus. So please sign the documents quickly. The title has to be in both our names. I stressed both deliberately. It was my declaration of territorial dominion, a reminder that everything Marcellus had was bound to me, and that if he ever walked away, he'd lose it all. Marcellus nodded, drenched in sweat. He looked like a man trapped between a smile and a nightmare, praying I'd stop painting this rosy future that now sounded more threatening than a knife pressed to his throat. He understood the message behind every beautifully phrased sentence. Don't be stupid. Don't trade a lifetime of stability for a disposable thrill. Talking about the house and future children drained the last drop of life from Connie. She curled into the armchair, clutching the flimsy plastic cup in both hands as if it were the only warmth left to her. I shifted my gaze between her cheap plastic cup and the delicate gold-rimmed porcelain in my hand. A slow, cruel satisfaction spread through me as I lifted my tea and savored it with exaggerated pleasure. It's delicious, I murmured. Smooth, clean, such a delicate aroma. Then, looking at her cup with feigned concern, I added, Connie, are you sure water is enough? Should I make you some orange juice? Water is so bland. My tone was sweet, but carried the disdain of a lady offering charity to a beggar. No, I'm fine, she rushed to say, hands waving nervously. I was thirsty. Water is enough. I don't want to be a bother. Bother. The word was almost laughable. Her very presence here at this hour was the greatest intrusion of all. I set my cup down firmly. The sharp click of porcelain against glass echoed through the room. Then I turned to Marcellus, who sat motionless, staring at his shoes like a corpse propped in a chair. Marcellus, I said sweetly, cut some apples for our guest. A man of the house should be a gentleman. You can't let a visitor sit there unattended. He jolted like he'd been electrocuted. He rushed to the kitchen, retrieved apples and a knife, and began peeling them with clumsy, trembling hands. The once skilled man, who used to carve flowers from carrots for me, couldn't even peel a simple apple in front of his mistress. Fear short-circuited his every movement. When he returned and set the plate on the table, I chose the best slice, pierced it with a fork, and gently lifted it to his mouth. Open up, baby, I whispered. Let me feed you. Don't use your hands. They're dirty. He froze for a moment, then obeyed. The act was natural for a loving couple, and excruciatingly provocative for the third person watching. With a delicate push, I slid the plate toward Kasani. Eat, Kasani. They're Honeycrisp, very sweet, very crunchy. Connie stared at the piece of apple Marcellus had just eaten, then at the plate before her, as if a knot had formed in her throat. How could she bring herself to swallow a single bite while witnessing such a display of affection? The discrimination wasn't limited to the cups. It extended to the attention, the care, the subtle choreography of ownership. I was the wife. I had every right to publicly care for my husband and be cared for in return. She, on the other hand, no matter how much Marcellus might desire her outside, was an intruder here, a forced spectator to the performance of our marriage's happiness. I watched Kiani's eyes glisten. She was probably crying inside, or maybe realizing, too late, the foolishness of walking into this trap. But I felt not a shred of pity. Compassion died the instant I saw the words, "I miss you," flash across his phone screen. Mercy is a luxury reserved for those who do not attempt to destroy another's home. She had crossed the line, and as the wife, I had every right to expose and unmask that hypocrisy in my own house. The clock struck 9 p.m. The cat-and-mouse game had reached its climax. It was time to deliver the final blow, to shatter the intruder's morale and warn my traitorous husband once and for all. I slowly drew my phone from my pocket and placed it deliberately on the table. I slid my finger across the screen as if checking a message, then sighed theatrically. The world is so complicated these days, I murmured. The news is nothing but infidelity and scandal. My girlfriends say girls today are very bold. They send messages to other women's husbands as if they were talking to friends, without a shred of shame. I paused, watching their reactions. Kaani remained frozen, but her breathing had quickened. Marcellus furtively wiped sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. The tension in the room was taut, like a guitar string ready to snap. I sharpened my tone further. I also usually check Marcellus's phone to help him with work stuff, and lately, I've seen a lot of messages from unknown numbers. Young girls, by the looks of it, interns. Affectionate messages to my husband. I glanced at Kaani. Her face had drained of all color. Her once deep red lips were now pale, trembling. With a cold, mocking smile, I delivered the final strike. You know what, Connie? Just the other day, I was at home while my husband was making dinner, when suddenly a girl sends him a message, saying, "I miss you." Her eyes widened, her breath caught, and the room fell into a silence that was more suffocating than any scream. The trap had closed, and she was fully aware she had walked straight into it. Some nerve, don't you think? To send a message like that while the wife is home. Was she challenging me? My words fell like lightning on Kaani. She stared at me with eyes wide as saucers, terror carved into her pupils. In that instant, she understood everything. The "I miss you" message from earlier. The reply, "Come over, my wife isn't home today." It had all been a trap, a perfect, deliberate trap I had crafted myself. And she, like a brainless moth, had flown straight into the flame. Her hands and feet began shaking uncontrollably. She looked at me as if she were facing some kind of monster. She finally realized the truth. The woman sitting across from her wasn't a docile, clueless housewife, but a master of psychological warfare. I had known everything from the start, yet I had welcomed her inside, offered her water, allowed her to sit comfortably, only to rip off her mask slowly, layer by agonizing layer, until she stood fully exposed in her own shame. Marcellus, still beside me, looked equally horrified. He turned to me with an expression I had never seen before. Pure fear. He never imagined I had read the message, never suspected I was capable of orchestrating such a cold, calculated humiliation. The level of intelligence and cruelty I displayed made him shiver. He realized, finally, how deeply he had underestimated his wife. I held Kaani's gaze. Mine was cold, sharp, unforgiving. I didn't need to say another word. Silence itself became the harshest sentence. I had revealed everything without ever saying her name. I wanted to see whether she had a shred of dignity left, enough to walk away on her own. That was the last sliver of mercy she would get from me. But Connie could not stand another second. The pressure in the room, my unblinking stare, Marcellus's pathetic cowardice, and the brutal truth now laid bare. It crushed her completely. She reached for her purse with trembling hands. In her rush, the bag hit the chair with a dull thud. She stood, legs wobbling so badly she nearly fell. Without meeting my eyes, she muttered that she had to go. Something urgent at home. Her mother needed her. She was sorry she couldn't stay longer. Her voice cracked like dry wood. She was seconds away from bursting into tears. Without waiting for permission, she darted toward the door like a thief fleeing a crime scene. She left behind the cake box on the table, a pathetic souvenir of her failed conquest. Marcellus instinctively moved as if to follow her, maybe to walk her out or spit out some feeble apology. But I was quicker. I placed my hand firmly on his thigh and squeezed, hard. "Don't move. Don't you dare!" He understood instantly. He froze, glued to the sofa, watching helplessly as Connie disappeared through the doorway. I rose and followed her, slowly, deliberately, each step calm and controlled in contrast to her frantic panic. At the entryway, she struggled with her shoes, hands shaking so badly she nearly dropped them. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, watching her with a mixture of disdain and detached pity. When she finally managed to slip them on and grip the doorknob to escape, I called her name. "Connie!" She stopped instantly, like a deer, hearing a predator behind it. She turned, eyes pleading, terrified of what I might do next. She probably expected a screaming match, insults, or hair-pulling, but I wasn't about to lower myself to that level. My dignity was far above street theatrics. I stepped closer and whispered in her ear, softly, almost tenderly, yet colder than ancient ice. Next time you come to see my husband, call first. Wandering around here at night like this, the neighbors might get the wrong impression about what kind of woman you are. And remember, Marcellus's wife isn't always out of the house. My words drained the last drop of color from her face. She nodded frantically, like a frightened bird pecking the ground, whispering a trembling yes. Then she practically ran to the elevator, pressing the button with desperate urgency. Under the blinding hallway lights, her small, lonely silhouette looked even more pathetic. I watched silently as the elevator door slid shut, swallowing her completely. A faint smile curled at the corner of my lips, one down. The young little prey had been properly frightened. Now, even if someone paid her, she wouldn't dare come near my husband again. But the war wasn't over. The real enemy, the one who stabbed me the deepest, was still sitting in the living room. I turned back and slammed the door shut. The sharp click of the lock echoed through the apartment like a judge striking a gavel. The trial of the traitorous husband had officially begun. I inhaled deeply, let my expression turn cold again, and stepped forward. The wooden door closed behind me, sealing us inside a suffocating bubble of tension. The small victory smile I had worn moments ago vanished instantly, as if someone had blown out a candle. I didn't walk straight to the living room. For a few seconds, I stood still, my hand gripping the icy doorknob. The nausea crawling up my throat was unbearable. My performance had been flawless, but the cost was a fresh wound splitting open inside my chest. Finally, I forced myself to move. Marcellus was exactly where I'd left him, frozen on the cream leather sofa, hands clasped between his knees, head bowed like a child called to the principal's office. The elegant, confident man he once pretended to be had evaporated. Now he looked pitiful. But his misery didn't soften me. It only fueled a sharper contempt. Without a word, I walked to the coffee table, picked up the phone lying there, glanced at him, then at the phone, and with a sudden violent motion, slammed it against the glass. Crack! The sound sliced through the room, shattering the silence along with the screen. Cracks spread like a spiderweb, an exact representation of our broken marriage. Marcellus flinched, staring at me, pale and horrified. I crossed my arms, my voice sharp, steady, and emotionless. Explain yourself. That message. Come over, my wife isn't home today. I sent it. Did you really think I was some idiot wandering around clueless? His mouth fell open. He wasn't expecting me to reveal my hand so early, so ruthlessly. Maybe he thought I had only suspicions, not the whole truth. He never imagined I had orchestrated everything from the very beginning. He stuttered, scrambling for an excuse. Baby, it's a misunderstanding. She's just a coworker. Her coming here today, I swear I didn't know anything. It was all a surprise for me. He tried to play innocent, tried to look hurt, tried to look confused. I laughed, cold, bitter. A coworker? A coworker texts you at 8 p.m. saying she misses you? A coworker knows your eating habits better than your own wife? A coworker walks into our house thinking I'm not home? I stepped closer until he had no choice but to meet my eyes. Don't insult my intelligence. We've lived together 6 years. I know your tells better than you do. You gave yourself away the second the doorbell rang. Then, with finality, I added, whatever you had with her, it contaminated you. And I don't eat trash. The disgust in my tone hit him harder than the shattered phone. Marcellus finally broke. He jumped from the sofa, fell to his knees, clutching my legs, sobbing so loud the walls almost vibrated. He begged me not to divorce him, swore he'd cut all ties with Kayani, said he'd quit his job, throw away his career, do anything to fix this. He even invoked our parents, our 6 years of marriage, anything to change my decision. But my heart was already gone. Whatever love I had left had died the moment I saw that message. Coldly, I pried his hands off my legs. Keep whatever dignity you have left. Don't crawl. My decision is final. I walked to the bedroom and pulled out the large suitcase I had packed that afternoon. I tossed in a few more essentials. Nothing more. Everything else in this apartment felt contaminated by betrayal. When I returned to the living room, dragging the suitcase, Marcellus was still collapsed on the floor, head down, crying like a child. I placed the papers I had prepared earlier on the table. The promissory note for the $40,000 my parents lent us at the beginning of our marriage. Proof. Receipts. This money is a debt. You will repay every cent, I said ice cold. When you sell the house, that debt is settled first. The rest we split. The house itself? Keep it. Live here with your mistress for all I care. But my parents' $40,000? You return it. His eyes widened in desperation. He knew he couldn't gather that money overnight. But I didn't care. Pain should be paid in full, emotionally and materially. I dragged my suitcase to the door. Before leaving, I took one last look around. This place once held our memories. Now it was nothing but the grave of my love. I walked out. The click of the closing door marked the end of 6 years of my youth wasted on a shameless man. I didn't look back. The elevator ride felt strangely quiet. As the Uber carried me through the empty night streets, the city lights blurred past the window. My mind was blank, but light. I had no tears left. They had crystallized into something sharper. Determination. I headed to Lysandra's apartment, my best friend since college, a powerful divorce lawyer known for tearing men like Marcellus apart in courtrooms. She was already waiting in her building's lobby. When she saw me, pale, suitcase in hand, she didn't ask a thing. She just hugged me, a warm, grounding embrace. I almost cried, but I swallowed it down. This was not the time for weakness. Inside her cozy apartment, she gave me hot tea and asked me to tell everything. So I did calmly, almost detached, as though narrating some other woman's tragedy. When I finished, she slammed her hand on the table and cursed loudly. She told me I'd handled everything brilliantly. What I'd done to the mistress was elegant, civilized, and brutally effective. Then she got serious. She reviewed all the evidence messages, photos, statements. She nodded, satisfied. This is enough to win easily, she said. And if he doesn't agree to a mutual divorce, I'll take your case myself. But she wasn't done. She leaned back, eyes sharp. Before we even get to court, we're going to teach that perfect little couple a lesson they'll never forget. Divorce is your liberation, but justice? Justice is making the traitor pay where it hurts most, his career and his reputation. At the company, the evidence was undeniable. The corporate card had been used for personal expenses with Connie. Receipts for business meals had been falsified. Embezzlement by the book. Marcellus's face went pale as wax. He tried to speak, to claim a misunderstanding, slander, some excuse, but the HR director cut him off with a firm hand. On the table lay the thick folder with the PDF I had sent. Irrefutable proof. He was left mute. 2 security guards approached him. "Gather your personal items and leave the office immediately," they instructed. Everyone in the room froze, stunned. The man who had once commanded respect as a team lead was now escorted out like a criminal. He walked in silence, head bowed, through murmuring colleagues. That public humiliation would scar his career forever. From Lysandra's apartment, I received the news by phone. I didn't laugh. I didn't gloat. I didn't feel pity. It was the price of betrayal. He had trampled on our marriage, pursued his desires, and sealed the fate of his career with his own hands. 3 days later, his termination became official. The scandal, tied directly to the legitimate wife, dominated the company's anonymous chat channels. Kaani, meanwhile, was packing her belongings into a cardboard box. No one approached to help her. The men who once flirted or fawned over her now avoided her like she carried the plague. Whispers of disdain followed her. She left the office alone, carrying her box through the long, empty hallway, as if walking a path of thorns. At the elevator, she passed the security guard who had watched her flee days earlier. The pity in his eyes broke something inside her. She finally crumpled, crying loudly, and fled the building, leaving behind the mockery of everyone around her. According to Lysandra, Kaani couldn't even manage the stairs at her apartment afterward. She moved, set her social media accounts to private, and vanished from the virtual world. It was an expensive, humiliating lesson for a young woman just starting out, her beauty and youth traded for vanity, and in the end, she lost the most precious thing a woman can hold: her honor and self-respect. I felt no remorse for Kayani. She chose that path, ignored morals and ethics, and suffered the consequences. I only hope she learns from it and finds a more upright way to live her life. As for me, reading my story later, I realized it had done more than serve vengeance. It had given courage, to myself, to other women enduring betrayal and mistreatment, to take control of their lives. I felt a strange warmth in my chest. My pain had not been wasted. It had become motivation, a lesson. I inhaled deeply, enjoying the crisp autumn air. The past remained locked behind courthouse doors. Ahead stretched a wide sky, vast and full of hope. I am Ayana. I am 32. I am single, independent, free, happy. I smiled and raised a glass of wine. The bitter taste on my tongue, followed by a lingering sweetness, mirrored my life perfectly. Sometimes you have to go through the bitterness to truly savor the sweetness of freedom. Did you enjoy the story? I'd love to know. Which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments and share our thoughts. If you liked the story and want to support me, you can send a super thanks to help me bring more stories like this your way. Your support means the world to me. On the screen, you'll also see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more waiting for you on my channel, so don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for being here, for reading, and for supporting my stories. I can't wait to hear your thoughts. With love and respect, see you in the next life story.